All right, everybody, quick note before we dive into this week's episode. I'm hopping on that Black Friday bandwagon. I know, terrible. Anyways, if you head over to forgedinthebackcountry.com, you can get 30% off all apparel by using the code BF24, and all orders over $150 will still qualify for free shipping. In addition, I am running a Black Friday deal on guided black bear hunts in British Columbia. Now, these hunts need to be booked in December, and they need to be for the 2025 season only. So this discount is only valid for the upcoming spring season, but I'm discounting guided bear hunts by up to 20%. So this will be the cheapest price of the year, guaranteed. So if you're looking to come to British Columbia and chase some black bears, shoot me an email, jay@mindfulhunter.com. Last note, there is 2 weeks left to enter the Prime RVX 34 giveaway. Head on over to mindful-reviews.com. Anyone who purchases a membership between now and December 15th will be automatically entered to win a Prime RVX 34. All right, I had a great time sitting down with Trail. He's one of my favorite people. He has an honesty about him that I really appreciate and resonates with me. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. All right. Cheers. There you are.
Any better?
Yeah, it's perfect. How's it going, brother?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good, man.
Technology challenged.
Yeah, well, this has got to be day to day for you, right? Working remote. You must Zoom shit all the time.
Yeah, we use Google Meet quite a bit, which is just, the link. But yeah, I'm definitely no whiz kid when it comes to computers and tech.
I don't miss consulting at all, dude. Being stuck on Zoom meetings all day, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. I do miss just regular office environment, like getting to go in, interact with people. There's definitely some perks about working from home, but I do miss just being able to go in the office and hang out and see guys and just have face-to-face interactions.
I was doing a bunch of research projects for clients right when COVID hit, because I was still consulting full time, and we were looking at impacts of working from home. And there's two major things that go on. Number one, a lot of the informal communication does not take place formally. There's this one study where they put little geo trackers on people, and then they watch them in a big office building for a month, and they watched where all the communication takes place. And it's like in the elevators, walking down the halls, walking in from the parking lot together, at the water cooler. And as soon as you move to fully online or mostly online, all that shit disappears, man. And I think you lose a big part of the culture of an organization. I think you have to be really intentional. And then the other thing, one of the reasons people get so tired on Zoom is because when we're face to face, I'm picking up subconsciously all kinds of cues from you about how you're feeling and your mood and just the way you carry yourself. And that helps me to understand how to communicate with you, and that you're understanding what I'm saying. And on Zoom, we get almost none of that shit. You get from here, you can't see my posture. You can't see how I'm reacting to things. And I think that really drains people, because you get off of a couple hour Zoom meeting and you're you're nuked, and it doesn't make logical sense. It's all I did is sit here and talk and listen. I should feel pretty good right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you said. I was in the Vegas office day before yesterday, down there doing a couple podcasts, and a lot of the best ideas that we have come after a podcast is kind of concluded. We're hanging out, we're shooting the bull, maybe we grab some lunch, or we're just like you're saying, walking down the hallway, break room, grabbing a snack. I mean, a lot of the best ideas, it just is this free flow of an exchange of ideas. And yeah, I do miss that a lot. It's tough, but then again, Vegas, it'd be tough to raise my 3 kids when they're so embedded in school, now.
I think the hybrid approach is decent, though. At least you're getting in, and I think that's where a lot of organizations are headed. At least you're getting in every now and then, and you can make it work. I think going full remote, I know Amazon's calling all its people back, and that was the other thing. Consulting for Lululemon, they could not find a replacement for their creative teams. Creative teams have to get together in person. So that insight you had about all your best ideas, you just can't replicate. Let's get on Zoom and brainstorm. And it's it doesn't work like that, man.
Yeah, it doesn't. You need that interaction. It's just the body cues. It's that, the jargon between coworkers and giving each other a hard time, and somebody will say something and you key off of that, and you just can't capture it via Zoom. It's definitely a lot tougher.
Yeah.
So I agree. Yeah, well, I make the most of it. I mean, I'm down there once a week, so typically on a Tuesday I'm down there, so we try to get a lot done. But those are long, big, full days.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting segue into what I wanted to open up with, actually, very unintentionally. Dude, your latest film kicked ass.
Oh, thanks.
I don't watch a whole lot of hunt films, which is kind of funny because I make them. And you think, but part of me is like, I've heard comics talk about this. They don't like to go watch other comics because they don't want to like unintentionally steal stuff. And I find that with hunt films, part of me doesn't want to watch them because I don't want to be like finding myself copying somebody else's style, or I just rather like have my own ideas and do my own thing. But I have to give you guys at GoHunt credit. Like, I think you have found the balance between like an artistic film that's still a hunt film. Like, some guys go over the top and they like, not that I have a problem with Donnie Vincent, but they get a little too Donnie Vincent, you know what I mean? And it's like, come on now, we're still in the mountains trying to kill shit. Like, let's keep it, back in reality a little bit. And then other guys are like too rednecky about it. And it's just, dudes hooting and hollering. And like, that doesn't really grab me either. But I find the GoHunt ones, man. And it's weird because I'd be interested in like this. Do you guys have somebody who manages all this? Because what I find weird is that you have multiple editors and camera guys, and yet there's a consistent aesthetic across all of the GoHunt films. How do you guys manage that?
Yeah, and I guess to start out, I would just say, I appreciate that. I've got a lot of messages. People like the film. We've had a lot of comments on YouTube, and I don't read a lot of the comments, but Brady forwards them to me. I keep telling people like all the credit really goes to Luke Dusenberry. So Luke Dusenberry filmed that hunt. He also edited the hunt. He called and we did a lot of the voiceover that we felt like it needed, because when you do a solo hunt film, I mean, it's really tough to get all of it when it's just you and a cameraman. He really has to like fish, especially me. He has to like fish it out of me, when I'm in the moment out there. And it doesn't always come through. So he had the idea for doing some voiceover and was really the genius behind plugging it in and where and the questions. And so I keep telling everybody, all the credit really. I'm just the dumb guy that showed up and hunted. Really Luke did all the work, right? Like he had the vision for it, the aesthetic of the individual shots. There's a shot in there of some sage grouse, which is just like,
yeah.
It's just a filler piece, if you will. But to me, like thinking back on that hunt, we saw a lot of sage grouse, and I remember sitting and looking at them. We saw a lot of chuckers and all those little details of the hunt that kind of make up a hunt film. He's really, really good at knowing what to capture and when to plug it in and how that's going to add to a film. We do have different cameramen. We have different people that have edited. For a lot of years, we had the same editor, which was Mather Maycore is his name. And good dude, really not a hunter at all. He's from Seattle. And I think his style of filmmaking was actually really good for us in that he looked at it from a different perspective than maybe a hunter would or does. Like
right.
he had kind of a different vision. And it's funny, hunting with him or hunting with Luke, there's so many times when I'm out there when I'll get back and I'll ask them, like, is there any way that we even captured enough film to make a film? Because it doesn't really feel like they're filming. Like they're very astute at picking their shots and knowing exactly what they want to film and what they want it to look like. And I think a lot of how a film comes together is the selection of the camera guy themselves. So they have a vision. They are creative. I feel like all of those guys that I've talked about. So, I mean, Luke, and we have others, but I feel like they all kind of fit the same mold for what we're looking for in a hunt film.
Right.
So I think that's part of the battle. And then, we kind of have this, legacy is a stupid word probably, but it's this kind of legacy of like producing hunt films of a certain genre, look, feel, vibe. And I think we have the ability, a lot of us have worked here for a while, myself included, Brady, Lorenzo, obviously Chris Porter, those guys have started the company. So we all kind of have a a vision of the brand, what we want the film to look like, and we all get a chance to put our input into it and then work with really good, high quality editors and cameramen. So I don't know if that was a long-winded answer, but
no, that helps a lot. And actually, I realized too, part of it, I think you answered unintentionally. I think having that legacy of films, when you bring on a filmer and an editor, how much they acknowledge it or not, they know in their heart, like, kind of the box a GoHunt film needs to fit in. Like, obviously they have room to play within certain guidelines, but even if you ask me to come, I would have a rough idea of what the end product should kind of look like, just having seen a half a dozen GoHunt films. Like, they all have some similar kind of characteristics running through them. Like, I like that you guys don't keep them too short. You don't have any problems with like a 40, 50-minute film sometimes. I like that you're not afraid of silence. I like that you're not afraid of like the more creative, artistic kind of music and not just the like, you know, old movie trailer, you know, crazy cinematic stuff that guys use, but like those kind of concepts kind of play out across the whole genre of your guys' film. I get inspired. It's funny. I'm about to do a late season archery mule deer hunt here at home. And I definitely made some notes when I was watching it. Like, I loved just some of the ways he did things, the comfort with silence, and like that's the thing about, and it's so funny about that. I'm jumping all over the place, but I could not agree more about those road hunts. I find them more mentally challenging because, like, in the backcountry, when I'm in the backcountry, that's it. I'm done. All I got to do is not stop, and I'm always hunting. And so there's this part of my mind that I just get to shut off. Where I find like those road hunts, one of the things that's challenging about them is I have to like constantly be remotivating myself because like I'll drive up to a little lookout, I'll get up in glass, and then I get back in the truck and I'm like, okay, now I got to hop on maps and I got to find another place. And there's just this like constant like resetting where I feel like with the backcountry ones, once I'm going, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't like a road hunt. Like, it is not my preference. It's not, in my opinion, it's not typically the type of hunt that I enjoy per se. It's way more mentally taxing in my opinion. And I don't know how to explain that other than you're constantly reevaluating and evaluating, like, where should I be? Where should I go? Where's the next spot? You know, you're going to get out in glass and jump back in and cover country, and you're doing it all day long, and you're bouncing around on, you know, rough, rocky dirt roads. I mean, I said over 600 miles. I'm sure it was over that. It's just a ridiculous amount of miles, but and I talked to a guy last night. So I picked up a kid from basketball practice, and he'd watched the film, and he just said, "Hey, I really like the film. You know, everybody's always kind of afraid to show that type of hunt, right? We want to portray like a, you know, backcountry badass,
Billy
right?
Badass, man. Yeah.
And I've had those hunts. I mean, I've done a bunch of them, and that's fine. But like, he's like, I just appreciate that you guys showed it for what it was, and you know, he was kind of asking me about it, and I said, you know, the thing is like I could have got out and I could have hiked some ridges, and I probably could have looked at, you know, 20 to 50 deer, you know, maybe a day. But that unit, given the nature of it, the roads, the access, and, you know, really there could have been deer from the bottom of it to the top, east to west. It didn't matter. And to me, it just made sense. Like, I want to find a buck that I can target and hunt. And the best way to do that is to look at as many deer as I possibly can. And the best mode of doing that is covering ground as quickly as possible in a vehicle. And, you know, just putting my eyes to work. And it's not the sexiest by any means. It's not, you know, I'm not a backcountry badass in that regard for sure. But it is what it is.
Yeah. That was one of the things that took me a few years to learn is like, you got to hunt the hunt that it is, not that you want it to be. I remember the first couple elk hunts before I even first killed an elk. I was doing these like 10-day backcountry things. And it's like, that's not how you hunt elk unless you've got some kind of intel or you got a pack horse that's going to come in and take it out. Or, like, there's rare occasions, but 99% of the time that is a terrible, putting 10 days worth of food and gear on your back and heading off into the mountains is a terrible way to hunt elk. But in my mind, I wanted a 10-day backcountry adventure. And It's like, well, go hunt mule deer then or something. You know what I mean? Like, go find the hunt that fits that desire because not all hunts fit all boxes. But the one point I wanted to note was with the limitations of it being a road hunt, I still found he and you did a great job of communicating the challenge of it. Like, because I think that's why most people don't film those or find it challenging to film those, is that it is difficult to capture that challenge. Whereas like the backcountry challenge or something, like that story just more naturally tells itself. As long as you just got a camera on, you're going to see a guy struggling. And when you get to the end of it, you're going to have enough material to put a cool story together. Where I feel like with those truck ones, it's much more challenging, because even me, myself, when I go on them, I was like, I don't know when to turn the camera on. Like, I'm driving up to another hilltop, I'm looking at some more. Like, it's hard to know what the story of the hunt is. And I thought you guys did a really good job of telling that. The other thing, and this is kind of a bigger question. I was thinking about this. You came up in conversation with a buddy. I went out for lunch with a buddy yesterday, and you came up in conversation because we were talking about the film. And one of the things that we both really respect is that, like, you're like a regular dude. Like these other guys that are in a bunch of hunt films and stuff where it's like, I'm never going to be that guy. Like, that guy has a life that's unattainable. You've got kids, you got a regular job, you're still getting out and getting after it. You still make mistakes and aren't afraid to share them. But one of the things that I was wondering when we were having that conversation, have you found it challenging being at GoHunt? Because I feel like it's almost antithetical to your personality. Like, like other guys, I feel like totally fit that mold and want to be the guy to talk about hunting all day and want to be the guy to be on hunt films, where I feel like you'd probably be just happy if everybody just left you alone and you could just like do your job and go on your hunts and don't even really give a shit about the accolades. Or so I'm interested in your personal struggle, because I think there's probably a real opportunity for you to have an impact with your role at GoHunt. So it's probably worth a compromise in your values in that regard. But what's that been like for you? Because it's been quite some time now.
Yeah, it's been 8 years. And I guess, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I guess I'm not as much of a chameleon as I might think I might be, but I struggle with, it's the number one thing that I struggle with this job and this position is putting myself out there. And, I can do it. It's effort for me. And I've said this to people, like I never, if you'd have known me in high school, if you'd have known me, my upbringing and, the way I grew up, I don't think anybody would say, yeah, that guy's going to, host a podcast and do video content and, put these hunts out. I'm a pretty reserved guy. I'm very introspective. I spend a lot of time alone. I just am. That's just my personality. And hunting for me is never really been about, accolades. I'm not trying to measure anything, my abilities against somebody else's. I think, comparison is the thief of joy, right? So that saying, I don't think the comparison among hunters for what we do is a good thing. It doesn't make me feel good. And really it's never like motivated me. To me, like what's always motivated me is the experience and being out there and testing myself. Like that's where I get my true sense of satisfaction. And I think that's probably why I like solo hunting, is because
right.
I feel like it is a test against me and my abilities and, the animal and the wilderness and trying to survive and make this thing work. And I just try to keep perspective, keep it for what it is, and, try to retain, my, I guess just retain who I am and kind of how I feel I am, and not feel like I need to be pressurized into being something that I'm not, because I'm not ever going to be that. Like, I'm not going to be I'm not Dan Staten. Like, I'm not living in the gym, Yeah. And I like that. I like that a lot. I think he's an awesome dude, Cam Hain, same thing. Those guys they're doing what they do and they do it really well, but like, that's just not my personality. And I guess I've gotten older, which has helped, but like, I've learned to accept that, like, that I am who I am, and I want to enjoy this for what it is and what it means to me. And I guess as far as like working here, the thing that makes it worth it for me, the thing that I actually do really enjoy is, the emails, the messages that come through from people that say, hey, you helped me draw a tag, and, you gave a tip on a podcast or a video. You helped me set up my bow. You gave me the confidence to like buy a bow press and set up my own bow and do my own work. So like that kind of stuff, when it comes back to me, it does feel really satisfying. Like I really appreciate that. And I felt like, in my own little way, like I've helped somebody achieve or do something that they probably didn't think that they ever would. And that there's like a sense of satisfaction and it makes it worth it. That's really what I like about it.
Yeah. Cause I was thinking too, I was like, I think if you were at another outdoor company that didn't have such an impact on actual people's ability to hunt and policy around hunt, like Lorenzo supporting you guys to go to Colorado, and the fact that you just got to sit on that working table for the mule deer plan in Utah, like those are things like not everybody gets to do in their normal roles. And it's like, so you're getting to have a legitimate, profound impact on not only on how people hunt, but like people's opportunities to hunt. And so I can see how it would be worth it to like give up a little bit of your privacy and isolation when you like are balancing those two things, because those are it's a big deal. You know what I mean? Like you're impacting a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, that is what makes it worth it for me. I'm also, I got a mortgage and I got car payments and I got 3 kids and I got to pay bills. And so this is a means that I can do that. So that's part of it as well. But yeah, I guess to go back and like answer your question, this isn't something that like comes naturally for me. And it's not something that like I always feel good about. I would say that internally it's probably the thing that I wrestle with the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. It always is kind of on my mind, just I'll come home from a day doing a podcast, or we'll do 2 podcasts in Vegas, or I'll do a day of content or video. And like, I'll come home and I'm like wiped out. Like I'm like mentally wiped out. It's like really challenging for me, which I can do it, but man, it's hard. It doesn't come easy.
Yeah. Something else that I found interesting and I'd like to get your take on is that like, you've been really transparent, and we've kind of talked offline about this a couple times. And you've also had a couple issues like this season that weren't issues previously. And I think we go through like, I had the same thing happen to me, and I had this interesting kind of insight. I almost think, okay, so I had marksmanship screw up 2 animals on me this year. I had a rifle goat at 525 yards that I didn't get to kill because my skill just wasn't up to the task. And I had a rifle that was shooting a little bit low. And after some test shots, I just realized this is past what I'm capable of doing ethically. And then I had a bad shot on an elk, archery elk, really steep, downhill at about 63 yards. And, 70 yards is kind of the upper limit under perfect conditions that I would feel comfortable taking a shot. And the one thing that I've always hung my hat on is that when I get close enough, stuff dies. My problem is always finding things and getting close. And those tend to be where I have issues, but I've always been very calm, very composed. I'm the guy that remembers my whole shot sequence. I don't get that blackout. I don't know where my peep was. Like it's always, and then this year it's like like the one thing that I could count on, like fell apart on me. And I realized that a lot of my shooting, I guess was subconscious. Like I wasn't super cognitive about it in the moment. And then maybe I started getting the yips, like they call it in golf, or maybe I started overthinking about it. And I felt like going into this season, I was like, I've got everything dialed. Like this is going to be the best season I've ever had. And it was like the worst by like not even a comparable margin. Like my own personal season was a catastrophe this year. And it was for reasons that were issues that I thought I had beat. Like I thought like that's a skill I have. I don't need to worry about this anymore. And I was wondering kind of a twofold question. You're incredibly transparent, which has helped me a lot. Like just to be honest, because it's like when I see you struggling with something like a bad shot placement, it kind of lets me go, okay, well, if Trail's struggling with that, then it's like, it's okay. Like, it happens to all of us. And then do you see this kind of like, so how do you deal with that and know like what to share and what not to share? And then being okay. Like I was thinking about that when you shared I'm going to simplify this question because I'm going to ask you 40 questions in a row. When you showed that shot on this most recent hunt film and then decided to keep hunting, I thought to myself, that's a bold thing to put out there because you're going to get all these armchair quarterbacks that think they know who should keep hunting and who shouldn't keep hunting. And so maybe let's use that as a specific example. How do you walk through the process of being like, okay, this is A, this is a decision I want to make, and then B, I'm comfortable putting this out there for the world because I'm confident that I've made the right choice for me in the moment?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know how else to say it other than I've always felt like honesty, just being honest. A lot of it just goes back to being like true to yourself. I feel like honesty is the best policy. I feel like if you own it, if you own your successes, then you should also be willing and capable of owning your mistakes.
Right.
And I feel like I want to take accountability, and if I take accountability for it and I acknowledge it, I talk about it, I work through it, I take the necessary steps to try to alleviate and make myself better. I felt like that's the best way that I can possibly handle it. I feel like, people, I feel like you get into trouble, and trouble, quote unquote trouble, but I feel like you get into trouble when you try to, hide things or try to, maybe falsify things, maybe try not to, show those in the ways that they actually happen. To me, again, this goes back to your previous question of just like who I am. I just want to feel good about myself.
Right.
And I don't feel good about myself if I feel like I'm not putting my true self out there. So if I'm not representing myself for who I really think I am and feel that I am, I don't feel good about myself. So like the decision to talk about something like this is just like, I just want to represent myself in the truest manner that I can. And I will deal with the fallout one way or the other. And yeah. I mean, here's the thing is like, people are going to, I know undoubtedly, like there are people that they'll talk behind my back. They'll make comments online. And reality is there's probably some justification for it. Like I agree. I made a bad shot. I made a bad shot on a bear this year as well in Alaska and didn't find it. I've struggled this year, no doubt. There's probably some justification in those people making those comments. There are things that I look back on that and I think, is there something I could have done differently? Mm-hmm. So I don't even mind, to be honest, that they say them. Like it's okay I'm okay with it. Like I can take it because in reality, there's probably some truth to it. Right.
Right.
I'm not trying to hide behind anything. Like I'm trying to do the very best I possibly can. And in each individual situation, I don't always do my best. And it's kind of the nature of the beast. And hunting, hunting is not, I guess I like to say it's not an exact science. Mm-hmm. We all like to think that it is. We all like to think that it's very cut and dry, that it's black and white, that either miss or you hit the animal and everything goes perfectly, but it's not. It's messy. Like killing an animal is messy, especially with a bow and arrow. There's a lot of things that have to go exactly right. And I've hunted and I know this, and I've done it long enough that I feel like I can allow myself some grace because I know I internally, I know how hard I work at it. Like right. I know how many arrows I shot. Like I know that there's not somebody up at the range with me every single morning other than my dog, but I know internally how hard I've worked at this. Like I know that I've shot arrows every single day. I know that I've put hours and hours and hours into setting up my bow and playing with equipment and tuning broadheads and, all the things that I've done. So internally I know, so I can feel pretty good. Like I can offer myself some grace for the mistakes that I've made because I do feel like I've put the work in. And then I just want to be better. I want to be better. And I feel like other people want to be better too. If I can motivate them to say, look, I made a mistake. This is what I think happened. This is what I'm going to do to try to deal with that mistake. I think it opens the door for people to say, yeah, mistakes happen. And, he made a mistake and, what can I do along with him to try to alleviate that in the future? So I don't know. I'm rambling, I feel like, but
no, not at all, man. You're nailing it. I share a lot of the similar sentiments. So from a practical perspective, because you brought up the bear shot, so you did have a couple shots that didn't go great this year. And I'm interested in, how do you think about that in hindsight? Is this something you're like, is it more, it happens and it's better just focus and move forward? Or is there like okay, something's broke, I need to like run through my shot sequence a little bit? Or how do you get your confidence back after having like, because neither of those shots were out of what I would call your comfort range. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've made tougher shots in tougher circumstances before. So it's like, how do you not let that get in your head, or does it? And then how do you deal with that?
Yeah. And I guess that also goes back to like being confident or being okay with talking about it, because I don't feel like I've taken shots that are outside of my effective range. I don't think I've pushed shots that I shouldn't have taken. So the bear 55 yards broadside, the buck 61, 62 yards, relatively broadside. I have been through shot sequences. I've thought endlessly. Some people, I think, have something like this happen, and they think that might be their reaction, is like, hey, this is just a part of bow hunting and it happens, and they move on. And I don't fault them for that. That's just who they are and their value judgment. But for me, I'm really introspective. I'm really analytical, and I think about this stuff like every single day. There's probably not a day that doesn't go by that I don't think about it and try to come to some new, perspective on it. What's something that I could do? So, first and foremost, like equipment, like go through my equipment. Was there something wrong with my equipment, the way that I had it set it up? Was there some issue there with my equipment? And so I kind of want to work through that process and, make sure that, next time I go out, everything is completely dialed, that I'm totally confident in my equipment. And I was before I left on both of these hunts, but it's just like something I want to drill down even further into. Like, I really want to go through my equipment. There's environmental conditions that I necessarily haven't always thought about. So that bear, my bow was completely drenched. I'd been out in the rain for hours and hours and hours. He was, 55 yards out in a tidal flat. It was raining. Going back and watching the video, you can actually see all the water droplets like come off that bow and then like drift with the wind as the bow goes forward. So when I saw that in the video, I mean, to me, I'm thinking, do I know what happens to my arrow in a downpour, a torrential downpour? Am I losing feet per second because of the amount of water and the rain that it's cutting through? Does my bow perform differently? So for me, that's something that it's a box I need to check. Like, I need to go out, I need to confirm and make sure that I know, so that next time, should that happen, I have a much better understanding of what my bow and arrow do in a downpour when they're drenched. So that's like one thing. Just process. So the last 2 years, I have gone to shooting a thumb button release. So I've been shooting, the UV button. I shoot that at the range. I shoot it every day. I shoot really, really well with it at the range. Prior to that, I had shot a hinge for years and years and years, and no problems. Made great shots. I can go back and, relive and retell you detail by detail how a lot of the shots transpired and how they worked. And I made really good shots. And that's something that has been different in the last couple of years. So it's had me really thinking about the process and how I activate a release in a really high stressful situation. And I can tell you pretty confidently, I don't feel like either on that bear or that buck that I rushed the shot. I've actually gone back and watched the video of both of those, and I've counted the seconds from the point that I came to full draw to the point that the release broke. And I did not, I can tell you pretty confidently, I did not like get to full draw, pin hits the animal, and I punched that trigger. Like, the pin sat. The level, I checked it. I remember it. Like, I went through the process. Like, I know for a fact. But there's something that makes me think that a hinge, the way I shoot a hinge, it's slow. It has the ability in some way to slow me down. There's something about it that forces me to work through a shot that maybe I am not experiencing in a high pressure situation with a thumb button release. And so that's something that I've been experimenting and playing with since I got back. I came back from, I bought two new hinges like just recently, and I've been going back and getting really used to back to shooting a hinge and just that process and working through it shot by shot by shot, being really intentional, being really focused, and just really working on that shot process, because I think I had something, those years that I didn't have any issues, and then the year that I had, there was something different, and that's one component of it. And I don't know that's necessarily just the release, but there's something in me, the way I shoot that release, that is different.
I want to dig into this for a second, because that elk is the first animal I've shot in 5 years that wasn't with my hinge. And the reason I switched is that my hinge doesn't have a safety of any kind. And every now and then, if I'm not paying enough attention, it will go off unintentionally. And for some reason, like, that's never happened during a hunt. It's happened at the range maybe half a dozen times, and I'll have a flyer go over the, and for some reason this year before my hunt, that like got into my head, and I was like, oh, what if this goes off? And so I started looking around for a hinge with a safety. And so I found that Stan One Tech, I think it's called, or
the Onyx.
Yeah, the Onyx, that's it. And before that, I'd been using a Fulcrum Flex. Now, when I originally bought my Fulcrum Flex, which is probably 3 years ago, I bought the Fulcrum Flex and the Abyss at the same time, because they have the exact same form factor. And I was working with Joel Turner at the time, and the reason he liked that is that you can practice with the hinge, hunt with the thumb button, and nothing's going to change for you. Anchor's going to be the same. And in fact, you can even shoot that thumb button in a way that even it like replicates the hand movement, which is how I try to shoot my thumb. But I'm always wondered, am I really, or am I, like, that's the part that I have. And the problem with the Stan Onyx, the Fulcrum Flex is like a more narrower style release, and I find the hook itself probably comes off maybe close to a half an inch further than the stand. And I get like that kind of right between here, right in the back of my jaw, like just a beautiful anchor. And I always have the string in the corner of my lip and the string in my nose, and I feel like tight in my anchor. And for the life of me, I can't replicate that with the Stan. I feel like it's a more compact release, and like I'm crunched up, and I feel like my shoulder's all jacked up, and and then I'm like kind of leaning down into my peep. Like, it's just, I've tried it many, many times, and I can't get it. So I'm interested, what prompted you to switch from the hinge in the first place? And what kind of hinges have you found have been working for you? And are there problems like that? Because I found going back and forth between trigger releases when I used to shoot trigger releases wasn't as complicated. Like, as long as that length of strap was the same, you can kind of put anything you want under your finger and you're going to be anchoring the same. But I find when you get into thumb buttons and hinges, they fundamentally change your anchoring position so much, it's really hard to go back and forth.
Yes, I think I made the switch because one thing I really liked is that I could take a thumb button release and I could hook it on my D loop and leave it. So I could hook it on my D loop. I could pull out a bugle or a cow call, external, bite and blow cow call. I could blow that thing. I have bull come in. I could just go straight back to my release without having to fish it out of my pocket, and then hook the hook on the D loop. And if you got a bull out coming and he's screaming and your nerves are going, I guarantee you know what that feeling is like, is trying to hook your hook on a D loop. I mean, you're like, So that was one of the reasons I thought, that's an advantage. And then I got one, and I've shot thumb buttons in the past, on and off here and there, just playing with them and stuff. But took it up to the range. I shot it for a few weeks, and I thought, man, I'm pretty consistent with this thing. I feel like I can shoot this almost exactly the same way I shoot my hinge. So I can, lay my thumb over that barrel. I can use pretty much the exact same, relaxation of the hand, the forearm, the bicep, pull with kind of that rhomboid, relax through the shot, and, the shot was breaking. And I was having a lot of fun shooting with the thumb button. I was shooting out to just for fun, 120 yards and, stacking arrows. And I thought, I feel like finally this is a thumb button that I can kind of command and I can control. I can shoot it under control the same way I shoot my hinges. Plus that now I have the advantage of hanging it on my D loop, and it's a trigger. If a bull hits a window and he's 10 yards away, I can make that thing go off, right? So for me, it all, kind of added up. And like I said, I can shoot that thing at the range on a 3D target in the morning real well. I mean, I can stack arrows and I feel super consistent. But I think it's like I said, going back to like a hunting situation, a really stressful hunting situation, I feel like there's got to be something in me that is just, it's different. I must not have the mental capability to slow that situation down as much as I need it, which a hinge forces me to do. And I'm comparing like shot situations from the past. So the feeling of shooting a bull in Wyoming at 55 yards with my hinge, where I've told this story before, but I remember coming to full draw, this bull standing broadside, the pins settle on his side, and my mind is screaming at me, shoot now, you have to shoot now. And I did it. I just went through my process. I remember thinking, okay, when's it going to go? And the shot broke, as it did every single day when I practiced at the range with my hinge. And I made just a phenomenal 55-yard double lung. He died 80 yards. I can compare that to shots that I've made with a thumb button. That deer that I hit, they felt different. They feel different. Yeah. I don't know how to say it other than mentally, I feel different. So yeah, I think for me, and again, everybody's capabilities, their ability to handle a situation, mentally stressful situation is different. But for me, I feel like I'm a better shooter under a stressful situation with a hinge. You asked a question. I'm rambling, but the hinges that I like, and you have to kind of find a hinge that works for you. You have to find a hinge that fits your anchor point, fits your hand, fits the style of shooting that you like. I've tried, oh man, my wife would kill me if she probably knew how many actual.
That's the problem these days, dude, because they're like $200, $300, $400. Like I'm looking at that Ultra View, I'm like, I'd love to do it. By the time I get that thing to Canada, I'm like $500 out of pocket. And then if it doesn't work, like, yeah, they're no joke. It's not the days of like, True Fire $65, trigger releases.
Yeah, they're pricey, and I've got a pile of them. But I found that for me, the one that I typically go back to is the TrueBall HT. So the TrueBall HT Pro. And then more recently, I bought a TrueBall Executive, which is Chris Perkins' signature release. And the reason I bought it is because it has a very similar handle profile to my HT Pro. But one slight advantage or difference, which I think is really interesting to play with, is the head. So the length of the shank, right, that goes up to the head on that release is adjustable. So you can you have a set screw, so you can actually lengthen or shorten the adjustment of that shank. And what that has allowed me to do is to like really micro and fine tune my anchor and my draw length. So, some heads on releases, when you get them, they feel real short, right? So they feel like they're sitting right on top of your knuckle.
That's like what that stand feels like to me, like it's buried between my knuckles.
Right. And some feel too long. It's like some of them feel like they're sticking way out here above, your second or your middle finger, your bird. But one thing I like about that Executive is that I can play with the length of that head. And, it's got all kinds of adjustability as far as the heat goes. You can shoot it with or without a click, which, you can change that and play with it. But, I think you have to, and it sucks, man. It sucks. You have to buy and try.
Does the head lock open? Because that's the only reason I don't like hunting with my Fulcrum is that the head does not lock open. Like there's no mag. So I literally have to walk around with it in my hand, and I keep my thumb on the back of the hook so that at a moment's notice, I'm ready to just clip it on. And if I don't, that thing just flops all around. And then you're right, in the heat of the moment, I'm fiddling with it to get it to open and get it to lock on.
Yeah, it doesn't, and
Yeah.
and you're right there. See, that's the thing about a hinge is that there's definitely disadvantages. Like open hook design, it's not ideal for a hunting situation. To
No.
try to hook that thing on a D loop, same thing with the head flopping back and forth, not ideal. It'd be great if that thing set automatically, and if you put it in your pocket, you pulled it out, that it was set and ready to go. So knowingly, there are disadvantages to shooting that style. I've looked at it and I've analyzed it, and I feel like for me, those are trade-offs that I'm willing to make in order to make a better shot on an animal when I do have it. Hitting an animal and losing it's the worst feeling.
Yep.
It will put me into depression. Legitimately. I've called my dad, mid hunts. I've talked to my dad when I hit that buck, or when I hit that bear when I got back. I've shed tears. Like, I hate it. I don't like this feeling.
Yeah.
Isn't
that why Brady quit
like
shooting archery in the first place? Which is like, when I actually heard him say that the other day, because I'd heard a rumor that that's why it was. And then right on one of the most recent podcast episodes, he brought that back up, and I was like, holy shit, that's intense, man. Like, especially with how good he is and how much archery hunting he's done, that's an impact, man.
Yeah, he's an interesting case, because he told me that he hit this buck in Colorado, hit it back, they figure. And again, I think that was like a 53-yard shot downhill.
Yeah.
I think he looked for 3 days, 3 days, had some bad luck as far as weather blowing in and rain, and they didn't find that buck. And I've talked to him, post that hunt, and he's always told me, he's like, yeah, it really like legitimately messed with me to a point where I can't bow hunt. Like, I couldn't bow hunt. And for a long time, I've been the guy going, come on, man, like, you're full of shit. There's no way. Like, you're not going to quit bow hunting because, that happened to you. Like, I know you. I know how hard you worked. I know how much effort and how meticulous you are. And, you're not going to, there's no way, like, this couldn't impact you to this depth. But I'm telling you, like, it legitimately impacted him on a level that it did. I mean, it caused him to quit bow hunting.
Yeah. That's wild.
And it is. And for me, I can't project onto him and say, come on, dude, that's stupid. Pick up the bow. Like, I don't know how it obviously impacted him very deeply.
Yep.
And everybody has to make this decision, on how they proceed. I'm not going to quit bow hunting. I would never quit bow hunting. Like, I love it too much, but I can tell you, I'm on a mission to never have to feel that again, and to do everything that I possibly can. I remember telling my wife after one of these, I guess I'm just going to shoot 2 times a day. I guess I'll shoot an hour in the morning, and I'll shoot an hour and a half at night.
Yeah.
If that's what it takes, then I'll do it. Because I just want to be confident. I want to know that when an animal's in range, I've done everything that I possibly can, that is a clean, ethical, quick kill.
Yeah, man. That's what I took away from my elk thing. It wasn't like, and luckily I saw enough of the shot that it was like, I knew the elk was fine. Like, I didn't have to deal with that part of it, but it was more, there was a moment where I was kind of pissed at myself because it was the only real shot opportunity I had on an elk this year. But then the longer feeling was just like, okay, I got to step it up. And for me, it was more like, I got to involve more complex training methodologies. Like, going to the range is like nice and everything, but it was like, how often do I shoot 25 degrees downhill at 60 yards? Honestly, never. I don't. And luckily I'm pretty close to the bush here. And, so now when I go out to the bush to do other stuff, I throw the 18-1 in the back, and I just throw it off the side of the road, and I stick a couple arrows in it, and I walk down and I get it and I throw it somewhere else. And I was like, that's a real weakness for me. And I've been tearing apart my rifle game this year, like because it was like, I took rifle shooting for granted. And then when I was in a situation where, and this was like a book, Billy, like that was like, dude, it was, and there was some other complications like where he was laying, but if I had have been supremely confident in my rifle shooting, I would have taken the risk of recovering him from where he was. But that was the takeaway for me this year, is that I'm not where I need to be. And I think sometimes we just get exposed. Like I'd killed everything else I'd had an opportunity to take a shot on, but maybe there just hadn't been anything out of my ability level. And then I had 2 back to back that were like close enough that I still felt confident taking the shot. Like, I don't think these are unethical, but they're far enough that they just exposed some of my weaknesses. Like, I just got to go get better. And the thing I like, I have this, I wonder too, because I feel like we're both really transparent, and I think having kids really impacts that. Like, I want to be the type of my man that my daughter looks up to. And anytime I'm in one of these situations, it's like, what would I tell my kid? And the thing with my kid, she's 9. So she's in that place where like nothing's ever her fault. Yeah, but. And I keep trying to drill into her. Listen, as soon as it's your fault, it's this magic unicorn that makes all the bad shit go away. Because now no one's going to be mad at you because you're taking responsibility for it. You can get better and fix it till it doesn't. And so it's like, you're worried about who to blame. And it's like, nobody cares. The only thing that matters is like, how can this not happen again? And as you transition into being an adult, boss doesn't give a shit if it's your fault or not. He cares whether or not you have a plan to fix it. And so it's like, walk into his office and say, I fucked up. This is what went wrong. This is what I'm going to do to fix it. And you'll be the go-to person at every single job for the rest of your life. So it's like, while I'm trying to drill this stuff into her mind, I'm in the same situation when those things happen to me. It's like, I almost feel a wave of relief when something happens that's my fault, because at least I can control this moving forward.
Completely. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I was a basketball coach in high school, and I had a period where I went through some just like personal trouble. I was in some trouble doing some things I wasn't supposed to. And I remember he called me in and he sat me down, and he basically laid it out for me. And he's like, here's what you're doing. And he's like, in reality, you think you're having this great time and you're doing these things and you have all this freedom. And his reality is this thing that you're doing, these things that you're doing, they're confining you because you're constantly worried about what people think or what's going to happen. He's like, it might take you some time to realize, but really true freedom is putting it out there and trying to be authentic with people and who you are, and acknowledge your mistakes, take responsibility for your mistakes, and own that, because in that there's freedom. There's freedom to, be you. You get it off your back. You know what I mean? And just to admit it. Like I've made mistakes. Like I definitely made some mistakes. I've made mistakes in the woods, and I'll make mistakes in the future, no doubt. I mean, I'm human. I will. But I think for me, at least, that was a good lesson at a very young age where I realized, there's like this freedom. I feel lighter when I'm just truthful, when I just get it off my back and own it. If I fuck up, I fuck up.
Yeah. I love it. How you doing for time? I'd like to talk some technical stuff, and instead we're not like super heavy and philosophical. Like, I love it, but people are going to get pissed if I don't ask some technical stuff. So it's pretty funny because I put out this video yesterday called 5 Reasons Why You Don't Need to Buy a New Bow. And then Matthews goes and releases the Lift X on the exact same day. And I was like, this is way too funny, man. And I'd like to have an interesting conversation about knowing when to upgrade, but maybe more quickly, just on a technical perspective, since you had the opportunity to shoot it, what's your 2 cents on the Lift X? Is this what I call a fundamental upgrade, or is it more of an iterative upgrade? And how's your experience been shooting it?
So I love the Lift. Like the Lift platform that they released last year, I thought it was like one of those big steps in a bow company. It feels like they come like every 3 to 4 or 5 years, right? Yeah. You get like this overhaul in the entire platform, new riser, new machining capabilities that are able to lighten that thing up. It's longer, it's stiffer. new limb technology, new cams. So you get the Switchwake X cams in the new bow, which I like the feel of that bow better than I did the V3X with the Switchwake cams. To me, that felt like a major upgrade. It was like, okay, if I'm looking for a new bow, the lift, awesome, get into it, buy it, you'll love it, right? I've got a V3X that I love. It's one of my very favorite bows ever. Since I got the lift, I haven't picked up my V3X. So it's I just shoot the lift really well, and I love that bow. I think I said at one point, either to somebody or in a video, but I feel like it's a shooter's bow. It's a fun bow to shoot. Like when I put that thing in my truck and I go to the range in the morning, I'm just grinning ear to ear because it's just fun to shoot. So I love that bow. So the Lift X is a improvement upon the Lift, but really it's I would say it's like one of those micro changes, right? And really the biggest change in that bow, in my opinion, is the limb shift technology, which is this ability to paper tune. So your left and right, your windage. Essentially, you don't have to press and replace top hats to shift your cams either right.
That's a big deal, man, because I was pretty disappointed with the Lift X. Not only being a Canadian, do I got to drop the regular lift. Not only being a Canadian, I got to drop $100 to go buy top hats if I can't tune my bow traditionally. And then I also got to have a press in order to do it. And I was like, I had a bit of a fundamental issue. I thought that missed the mark.
Yeah. So that is a major advantage. So if you're somebody that wants to work on your bow at home, you don't have a press, this is an upgrade. Like this is definitely going to be really handy because you can micro adjust your left and right. And it's not actually even moving the cam. So the cam is actually slaved to the left limb. It's actually increasing the space. So it's really intuitive. It's really super simple to use, and you're not limited to the sizes of the top hats that were available. You can micro adjust that thing. So I guess the way that I would put it, so for example, my lift from last year, I would get my top hats in it. I would paper tune, and I would paper tune pretty clean, but there was always like maybe just a smidge, of a left or a right tear. And I knew at that point, I've got options. If I change out top hats, I'm probably going to put the thing way out of whack. But reality, kind of the next step is either like monkey with your spine of your arrow, either lengthen or straighten it, kind of work with your arrow, or just make a micro adjustment to your rest, which is typically where I'd go to because it's the easiest. So I'd make this micro adjustment with my rest, and I would paper tune to a perfect bullet hole. Now, with the Lift X, you can set your rest at 13/16. So dead center, it's where I've got the most clearance for my veins, for my grip, for my shooting style. I can leave that be, and now I can use that limb shift technology. It was just an Allen screw in the end of the one limb, or both limbs actually. But all you got to do is make that change either left or right, and it's micro adjustable. So it is an advantage. And the other thing about it, anytime you're working on a bow, if you're working on a lift from last year, anytime you press that bow and you pull the cams, you pull out the top hats, you put new top hats in, you have the possibility of changing something.
Yep.
Because you're pressing it, right? And you're pulling the cams, you're in and out, back and forth. So this is it's a pretty big deal. It seems minor, but it's actually a pretty nice advancement for them. Otherwise, the bow, the actual platform of the bow is the same. It's like same spec, same feet per second. It's the same weight, same riser, essentially. The grip slightly changed, but I'm not really, and admittedly, I haven't shot all the new grips, but I'm a guy, I can probably tell you with good confidence, I'll probably end up pulling the grip off anyway and shooting it with tennis racket tape because that's what I like.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it's not majorly different in that arena, but really the bread and butter is that limb shift technology.
Yeah, that's fairly interesting, and I've really enjoyed. I don't think there's been any major improvements to the physics of shooting the last couple of years, but seeing the adjustment to the inline accessories, adjustment to tuning capabilities like Bowtech has been putting forth and stuff at least there's been some innovation in other arenas. I'm liking that they're starting to focus on other things. I really wish they would just get away from this yearly upgrade cycle. Like, I think it's wasting everybody's money. I think it's wasting their R&D money, their marketing budget. No other products do it. You don't see a new Western Mountaineering sleeping bag every year or a new Weatherby 300 Win Mag. I think it's ridiculous. And I think, the problem is, unless they all get together and agree to all do it, I don't know how they get out of it, because you're just going to get hammered, that year that you don't drop a new bow and everybody else does. But I think it's silly.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me say something else, kind of goes back to your original heart of your question. So you asked the question, when is the time to upgrade a bow, or who should upgrade your bow? Right. Mm-hmm. So my opinion, I really liked the lift. I think if you're shooting an older bow, I think the lift is a really nice, solid upgrade. I felt like it was one of those upgrades that is worthwhile. If you have the ability to tune your bow at home and you have some working knowledge, you have a press, I think the lift is an awesome option. And I actually like the top hats, because here's the thing. You set your top hats and you tune the bow, it's not moving.
Right.
Like there's no possibility that thing can move. Like there's no chance. It's inside the limb. It's there, right? So I think if you have the ability to work on your bow, I don't think there's any shame. There's no reason you couldn't shoot a lift from last year and be really, really happy with that bow. The Lift X, super nice bow, just as the Lift was. Same specs, super shootable. But if you don't have a press, you don't have a ton of working knowledge on how to work on your bow, it's a nice option for you. Does that answer your question?
No, it totally does. And this is what I'd like. It's kind of funny because we both indirectly make our living from gear. And I find even I have to check myself every now and then. Just because I'm reviewing gear, I'm not saying you need it, but I recognize there's an emotional impact. When I talk about, I just tried these new boots, they're great, that kind of twinges at people's heartstrings and they're like, now I need to go buy it. And I do feel like an ethical responsibility. And lately I've been trying to push more this message like, listen, man, if it was $2,000 for a new bow, you'd be better off taking an extra week off work and go hunting elk for another week. Like, to be honest with you, there's better ways if you want to increase the likelihood of success hunting, and I'm speaking more to myself than anybody else, there's better ways to do it than buying new gear. And it's normally results in how can you spend more time in the field? We're not the best examples for this because we get to put our hands on a lot of stuff without having to pay for it. But for those normal guys out there, and I think you did a great example with the bow, what are some things that you think of when it comes to other pieces of gear that would highlight when somebody should upgrade? Like, what are some things that you'd be looking for almost more in principle that would indicate to you maybe I should look at upgrading this piece of gear?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've always been a proponent of optics. So get the best optics that you can afford. You can't kill what you can't see. And undoubtedly, without a doubt, you definitely see more animals and you're more comfortable with a good tripod and good glass, good optics. I've had my eyes open with these new SIG, Zulu 6s.
Dude.
Optically, there's some bread on the table for them to kind of pick up. But as far as the actual image stabilization, it's so incredible.
Yeah.
It's legitimately.
I don't want to like him as much as I do. And the analogy I've been using, would you rather a $1,000 pair of binos on a tripod or a $3,000 pair in your hand? I'm going to find more animals with the $1,000 pair on a tripod all day, especially if we're talking about, glassing at distance. Like I was guiding in Alberta this year and we do a lot of walking and glassing because there's a lot of flat prairies with coulees, and we do what we call staircasing, where you take one or two steps forward and that opens up some more of the far wall of the coulee, and then you glass it all and you take another 2 steps. It's super painstaking. But I didn't have my Zulus. I had my NL Pures, and one of my hunters had the Zulus, and he was picking up bucks before I was. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be the guy guiding here. Like, is this my job to find him first? And then I borrowed his once when I took out my other hunter, and I was like, no shit, man. Like, no, like, you can't miss, especially in this situation where we're really only glassing like 300, 400, 500 yards out, but like having everything completely, and they recently sent the third gens to me for review. And other than the weight, I really felt like they addressed a lot of the issues that I had with the second gens, like the low light ability, some of the glare from the prism, like some of the more technical problems that I had with the second gens. I really feel like they addressed. Field of view is still garbage, but it's like, there's no free lunch. You're going to have to pay for that somewhere. But yeah, it's funny. I don't want to like them because they go against like the, use the best glass. You're going to see the best, but it's like, this is like, okay, it might not be the best glass, but is it giving you the best viewing experience? And it's really hard to not say they're one of the better options right now for binos.
For sure. Yeah, one of the things that I really noticed about them is like archery elk hunting spot and stock, or even archery mule deer hunting, when it's not even like you're sitting and glassing, you're not trying to find an animal, but you're actually like in close, right? Yeah. So you're trying to close that distance from 150 to 50 yards, and you've got a bull that's like tucked in a bunch of pines, and it's hard to pick him out, and you're really just like looking for a shade of hide or an antler tip, or you're stalking in on a muley and you can only see like the tip of a tine and he's just buried in a patch of sagebrush. You can't hold a pair of tens still enough on your hand to find that at that level.
Especially archery hunting with one hand.
Yeah, with one hand. Yeah, those Zulu sixes in that situation specifically, to me, were like mind blowing. I'm like, oh, this is an entirely different game at this point, because I can level those out, stabilize them, and like I'm picking up detail that I could never hold still enough with just a set of tens, even if the glass was the best of the best.
And this is why, and I've talked with Troy about this, I feel like there's another avenue or another product here that they should be working on. If I want 16 power, I'd rather just put a pair of 15 binos on a tripod, because the other thing is there's technical elements about glassing at distance that I need a tripod. I like to grid, like I can't hold them up that long and then I'm bouncing all over the place. And how do I know I looked at everything? I want a pair of 8s or 10s of these things with like a 300-foot field of view at 1,000 yards instead of 200. I understand why the first instinct would be, oh, if they're stable, we can make them super high power. But I think in reality, I want a pair of 8s or 10s, because where I'm finding them more useful is the exact use case you just described.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I spent 3 days on an archery deer hunt with a buddy that had a tag this year. And I went up the first weekend with just my Zulu sixes and my chest harness, and I can't sit long enough, comfortably enough with those things on my knees, even though they are, stable. The next time I went out, I took a pair of 15 SLC on, a tripod, and man, I tore that place apart.
Yes.
I found deer, I'm like, okay, there's that deer. That's where he's at. That's where he's at. So I still think that like that's a better tool for just like sitting down and really covering a landscape. And I'm with you. I use the 12s. So,
yep.
A lot of people, Brady loves the 16s. For me, they're overkill. I don't need 16s. Yep. My best use case scenario for those things are, an active bow hunting situation where I am scanning as I'm walking. Maybe I'm going to sit down and glass a little bit, but it's really like that approach where they become really, really handy.
Yeah. Any other gear that sticks out this year that might be newer or stuff that kind of surprised you?
I mean, I always go to archery, right? But I think it's been an awesome year for sights. So there's 3 new sights, on the market. They, UV, they just released this Matthews Edition slider sight, which is kind of a revamp of their slider sight, which I've got one here. So this is the old version. This is the new version, just also launched yesterday in conjunction with their bow launches. I felt like they addressed a lot of the issues, kind of the problems that I had with the original UV slider. This is a 5-pin model, which is I've been asking for. I want a 5-pin sight.
That's one of the things that's been holding me off from trying
Mhm.
UV. I'm a diehard 5-pin guy, and so when there wasn't an option, I was like, okay, it's just not on the table for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they've lightened it up. So I mean, this thing's like 9 ounces, straight mount. So you get rid of that bend in it, which kind of defeated the purpose of having it mounted directly in the riser anyway.
Right.
So they addressed that, which I really like. And then also, I mean, I also recently picked up a dialed proof sight.
Oh, I've just been seeing about these.
So I've got one sitting here. Sorry, my desk. I'd be embarrassed if I showed you my desk right now. But, so this is like the Arctos or the Arcos, I guess, that they originally launched, right?
Yeah.
And I liked it. It had some things about it that I didn't really necessarily love. I talked to folks and kind of gave my feedback based on what I thought on it. And they came out with the proof this year. And I felt like they've addressed absolutely every concern that I had, anybody else had that gave those guys feedback. And I've got it on a bow upstairs, and I'm hoping to get that today and do some shooting this afternoon. But that sight is really solid and really well built and thought out. And, kudos to those guys, because I think they took a lot of feedback and they incorporated it all into their platform. And then, Excel. So Excel just launched a kind of an updated version of the landslide sight, which they're calling the driver. And that thing looks sick. And it's even lighter. I've heard it's like not even 9 ounces. So I think it's been a really good year for archery accessories already. And I felt like for a long time, there were some good sights on the market. There always has been, but I felt like this year there's 3 at least solid, really cool options.
I know the Booney came out, and a lot of people were really excited about that as well, because it addressed the third access issue on the Spot Hog, and there's a lot of other elements of the Spot Hog that people really, really liked. So yeah, there's definitely, it's funny how that happens. Like you'll go through this like lull, and maybe it's just been, that's the thing that's been kind of frustrating me, is I love the inline technologies with the bows, but it's frustrating that they're all different, especially for a guy who tests gear. Like Prime and Hoyt are using the Picatinny thing. Matthews has the inline thing. So then it's like, am I supposed to buy like 2 versions of every sight so I can test them on, or do I just use the typical dovetail? But then it's like, well, now am I really giving this bow the best look that I could? And it's tough for people who want to switch platforms, because it gets very expensive. At least before, if you could continue to use, and rests are kind of dealing with the same thing, because you have some bows are using integrated rests and some bows can't use. Like I like that Hamsky Epsilon, and they have some rests that are proprietary to individual bows. And I guess that's just part of, like, you're just never going to get away from that. But it's nice if you're going to just live on a platform, because you can really optimize for that platform. It's just frustrating when you go to switch back and forth.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Yeah, that would be a whole bunch of hoops that you'd have to jump through to try to do that.
Well, and I was wishing they would come out with better. I wish there was like, you could just switch the adapter, and on some of them you can, but some of them you can't. But that would be a nice thing where, for $100 I can buy the Picatinny adapter for one of these sites, for example, or something like that.
Yeah. So that new dialed proof, you actually can. So I haven't even pulled them out, but that's a standard attachment that you would put on the side of your riser with the dovetail that you mount into that, and then that's the Picatinny piece that you just
perfect.
Pop off and put it on. So that is unique and really cool with that new dialed sight. And like I said, I'm really impressed with it. Like, I'm super excited to get the thing out in the field and really put it through the paces and see what it looks like, because I liked this sight a lot. So this little new slider from Matthews and UV, it's a really nice sight. But then getting that dialed one in my hand, I thought, oh, okay, yeah, this is, you guys made a game of it. Let's see what happens.
I should reach out to those guys, because I like that story too. Like, it's just, 2 guys, younger dudes, like, had a good idea for a product, wanted to do something better. Like, I liked when you had UltraView on the podcast. Mm-hmm. I didn't know any of his backstory, and kind of, because they kind of come off as like super high end gear. You wouldn't think he had the like garage startup backstory that he does, and it made me more. I haven't really run any UltraView stuff, but it made me more interested to try it, because I think that impacts our opinions of brands, like,
For sure.
So I should at least get those dialed guys on the podcast, because it is interesting that it's tricky with my platform too, because it's like, I want to have product guys on, but it's like, you listen to other podcasts and they just turn into commercials for the product. And it's like, I like to hear story, and I like to hear, and me coming from a business consulting background, I think it's always interesting to dive into the challenges of launching a brand and that kind of stuff. But it's like, I also don't want to have you on and we just pitch your product for 45 minutes, because that's not really integral, to what I do or what people are hoping to hear. Anyways, that's kind of an aside, but it's a fine line.
It is. Yeah, that's hard. It is hard to have somebody that lives and bleeds their brand.
Yeah.
And have them come on and not have it come off sounding as a commercial, as it should. That's their brand.
Totally.
Which I get. Yeah. Those ones are always kind of hard. I always try to, if I can, and I'm not always successful, but sometimes it's just fun to, drill down into, their backstory. Like, where'd you come from? Why this thing? What is it about you that makes what you do now interesting and applicable? And like you brought up UltraView, Colby. I really like Colby over at UltraView. The guy is one of the most curious people I think I've ever met. Like he'll walk into a room and he'll be there for a minute and a half, and you're talking, having a conversation, and he's like immediately picking things up and looking at them. Like, he's walking over to my podcast table and looking to see how we have the mics attached to the table. He's just super curious, genuinely. It's not forced or fake. I mean, that's really who he is. He's just like a really genuine, curious person. And like, his story is really cool. He's a nice guy also. So I love, Dialed. I brought Dialed up, but those guys are cool too. Like, their story is so cool. And there's so much about different companies that really, that's the heart of what sucks me into their brand or their product.
Yeah.
Totally. It's a complete package. And I think if you can do both, if you can produce the product and you have, people that are really, they live and breathe it, they love it, and, they're in it for the right reasons, I guess, in my opinion. Like, I would love supporting those kinds of companies.
I think you three are the heart and soul of GoHunt. Like, there's more guys there for sure, like, that are interesting and that convey story. Like, I'm a big believer that people don't buy product, they buy story. And they buy participation in a story. Like, they want to feel like they're part of something. And so, brand awareness and the essence of a brand really comes down to, like, who are we as a company and what do we believe in? And I think, specifically you, Brady, and Lorenzo really communicate that for GoHunt. Like, you guys make it a company that people want to be a part of. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. I appreciate that. You guys in the front office probably get mad, even like our finance guys, because I have a little bit of a tagline that I always say, like, brand above bottom line.
Yeah.
Like, brand is everything to me. Yeah. Like, who are the people and why do they do the thing? Why are you selling the thing that you're trying to sell? Like, what's the motivation in it? If it's in producing something cool, if it's helping people, if it's helping you achieve your dreams and doing the things that you want to do, to me, that's what matters more than bottom line. And again, I'm not wealthy. That's probably why. But
I think the two are interdependent, because I do think there's a long run and the short run, and I think you can watch the bottom line in the short term and maybe be slightly more profitable, but are you still going to be here in a decade and are going to look at, dude, the growth of GoHunt has been astonishing to watch just from a business development perspective. Like, essentially starting out as nothing more really than a fancy way to combine stats that already existed if you were nerdy enough to go dive into it, to now turning into, a major player in the e-com space, a mapping platform, the draw odds platform, the, content and media production. Like, it's been wild to watch. And like, that never would have happened if somebody like Lorenzo didn't have the vision for that at the beginning, because there would have been, I'm sure it took a lot of investment, and I'm sure there was a lot of years before it was cash flow positive.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Took some risk, and Yeah, and a vision. And I don't know. I think the vision develops as well. I
Right.
mean, you have an idea. You bring people in, and you get kind of this melting pot of personalities and people and visions, and it kind of develops and grows. Yeah, I think we have a good mix. I think it's a good mix of intentions and business and backgrounds, and it's been good. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. What's anything left for you this year, hunting wise?
I have a deer tag that I haven't even. So I bought the OTC deer tag in Arizona back last year, about the same time,
Yeah.
because you have to buy it a year in advance. So I bought it with the intent of going down in January, but I never made it because it just gets really busy for me in January. So I still have that tag. I'm thinking about running down with Omar that I work with here for maybe a weekend or two. I think that opens the 13th of December and runs kind of through the end of the month. So I might run down there for like an extended weekend and make that a go. But really, once I get into January through May, it's really busy for me on the research and article side of things. Like those
Right.
application strategy articles are really time consuming, and those are additive to a podcast once a week, my own podcast, video content, everything else that I do. So it gets really hectic for me in the spring.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how there's different seasons, and then even hunting changes. Like I used to have more of an off season, and now with like the weird hunts you can go do in January, February, and then spring bear up here kicks off right away. Mm-hmm. There's definitely not as much of a clear off season as there used to be. Last couple of years, I've kind of chilled out on the applications, and I've just been building bonus points. And I was thinking about it. Your story about Nevada got me inspired to like really dig back into it again this year, because that was how I drew my New Mexico elk tag. It was one of those 0.65s, and I was all on GoHunt, and I did all that research, and I drew like one of the best elk tags, and it's the best elk hunt I've ever had in my life. And you start realizing, like, you go across 2, 3, 4 different species across 5 or 6 different Western states, and you got like 20 lottery tickets you're throwing out there. Like, and it doesn't cost any more with most of these states to buy a bonus point or throw a lottery ticket out into the wind with these 0.65s. It takes a little more time and energy because you got to make sure you're not going to end up with overlapping tags and when are they all coming out. But if you're willing to do, and I'm like you, like I dig that stuff. Like I like nerding out on that, but I've already made the commitment to myself. I'm going to throw some lottery tickets back in the ring this year because it's just fun to get into that. And then it's like, you never know, man. You never know. You just like, somebody's got to draw the tags.
Yeah. And I know people every year that draw, phenomenal tags with very low or no chances. I've had it happen from time to time. And I mean, you play the game. For me, my goal is every year I want to have an antelope, a deer, and an elk tag. So if I can hunt those 3 species every fall, I feel like I'm doing pretty good, and I feel pretty good, and I have to play the game in all the various states, and I kind of have to go back and look at my options and make sure that I'm building points and I'm, capitalizing on OTC options when I can and kind of fill in my schedule. But I feel like if I'm pretty diligent about it, that's like a really realistic goal. I could pretty much do it every single year. I could do an antelope, a deer hunt, and an elk hunt. And there's no reason for anybody ever to stay home if it's something that you want to do, because those opportunities are there. You just have to invest the time and the effort and, the research. I figure I probably spend, $2,000, which is it's not nothing, but I probably spend $2,000 a year in applications and bonus points and preference points. But the reality is like, if I want to go hunting, that's what is important to me, that's what I do. It's like what I put my money into. I mean, my 4Runner's got almost 300,000 miles on it. I'm going to drive that thing until the wheels fall off.
That's wild.
I'm not buying new sneakers or,
it's just releases, bow sights, and tags.
That's it. Yeah. That's where I put my money. So, application fees and tags and, some equipment, and that's really like what I want to do. So I guess you just got to decide like how important it is to you.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I've kind of kept you as long as I should keep you. I'm sure you got stuff to do. I know it makes you uncomfortable, but I want to reiterate how much I appreciate the impact you do have, because you're one of those guys that I look to, and I appreciate you being in the industry, even though it makes you uncomfortable and you'd rather not be in the industry. So yeah. And keep making stuff, man. Cause that hunt film was just fantastic. Like, it's rare that I watch one and it sticks with me. And I made a note this morning when I was driving home from dropping my kid off. I got to reach out to Luke and get him on the podcast, because I want to find out what goes through that guy's, like, from my own storytelling process. Like, I think I could learn a lot. I'd be very interested to hear just how he goes about crafting those stories. Cause that was right from the opening. Like, I know the sagegrass thing you're talking about. It's when the title goes, and I'm like 45 seconds into this thing and I already know the film. Like, I was just like, and it was like, it was nothing, but it was everything. And it was just like, I'm very curious about those small decisions and all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm going to reach out to him and get him on, because yeah, I'm super intrigued. And I've seen some of this stuff. I know he's done a bunch of Brady's hunts as well. And the other guy's super hardcore to boot. Like that's the interesting thing, finding somebody who has those creative sensitivities, but then also is hardcore enough to like go to those places and do those things to try and capture those stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, have Luke on. Luke's an awesome videographer, great storyteller, and then on top of that, he's just a hell of a nice guy. Like, really genuine, nice dude. Like,
yeah,
do anything for you. Man, having a camera guy, it's funny because when you're out there and you're hunting, and you know what it's like. Like, there's times where you're exhausted and you're unmotivated, and there's times when things don't go the way that they're supposed to, and you're extremely angry at yourself or the situation, and you messed up. And Luke's always been so good at reading the room, if you will. He knows when to lay off. He knows when to engage, and gives you the time. I mean, he's not a guy that's ever stuck a camera in my face when I've been at my lowest point and said, "Tell me what you're feeling."
Right.
Like, he knows he can read a room, and like, for me, that's huge with a camera guy. Just the ability to feel comfortable with him is a big part of that whole process, which I'm sure you know. But Luke's a good dude. I hope you do have him on, because I think he's extremely talented, and like I said, he's a good dude.
Yeah, I'm going to reach out. Listen, I'll put links to everything in the show notes, podcast, GoHunt, your IG, and all that kind of stuff. Anything you want to promote or shout out or get people aware of before we log off?
Give us a listen on our podcast if you want to. We're always trying to grow that audience, and give the Big Hunt Guys podcast a listen to. And then, personally, I don't have anything really to plug. I mean, you can follow me on Instagram. I haven't posted in probably a year and a half. I just don't, I'm not good at it, for one. And then two, it's having 3 boys at this day and age. It's really hard for me to tell them that I think social media is mostly a waste, in my opinion. Like, I think you can go down rabbit holes and waste far too much time on social media. So for me, it's really hard for me to not try to model what I think their view of social media should be.
Right.
So I'm okay with them consuming it. Consume it. Go ahead. Just keep it in check and understand it for what it is, and try not to base any of your own self-worth on likes or views or comments. Yeah. Because that stuff doesn't really matter. I mean, really what matters is who you are and what you think of yourself, and, be to thy own self, be true. Right. So I'm trying to model that in my kids, but yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. I guess I should say the thing with Instagram that is kind of nice is, like, if you have questions, you can DM me, and I try to get back to people. I'm not always the best at it, but I really do try to make an effort to get back to folks. So if you got questions, that's probably the easiest place to reach me.
And I will give a personal recommendation. If you haven't listened to the Big Hunt Guys podcast, start with the Halloween episode, because I think that may have been my favorite podcast of the year. That was outstanding. Just like the weird stories. And who knew Lorenzo was such a pussy? I was just like... Yeah, I say that, in a kind-hearted way, but it was hilarious and insightful, and Yeah, I was like, I rarely laugh out loud. Do you know what I mean? But I was just driving around listening to that one, man. It was outstanding.
Yeah, that was a fun one. That was one we're gonna do every single year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd listened to some other podcasts that there's a podcast called Spooked actually, which is like an NPR offshoot, and they leading up to Halloween and theirs is way better produced than ours was. But I thought, man, here's like an interesting take that we could do on Halloween in the woods because you see so much weird stuff.
Yeah.
Like I've had some really weird ones, and I told a couple of them. I've got more, but it's been mind blowing the amount of stories and pictures and photos and video that people have sent since that episode released, where it's just like, what in the world is going on out there? Like there is some wild shit going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was fun. That was a really fun one. So we'll do that again next year for sure.
Well, I will look forward to it. All right, man. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. This is one I look forward to. It's fun. It's good to have a good conversation with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, man. All right. We'll chat soon. Enjoy your day.
Okay. Yeah. You too. Bye.